The chronicles of human ambition often begin not with a map, but with a whisper of the impossible. 35 centuries ago, a queen of Egypt dared to dream of a realm that existed only in the fading echoes of ancestral lore. Queen Hatshepsut, a woman holding a tenuous grip on the pharaoh's throne, dispatched 5 majestic vessels toward a horizon no living person had ever witnessed. Guided by crumbling fragments of ancient texts and the tall tales of her great-grandfathers, she sought the land of God, the legendary Punt. When those ships finally crested the Nile's horizon upon their return, they were more than just transport. They were floating treasuries. They groaned under the weight of pure gold, exotic ebony, and chattering monkeys. But the true marvel was a botanical miracle. 31 living mirror trees, their roots still clutching their native soil. This expedition wasn't merely a trade mission. It was one of the earliest documented long-distance maritime triumphs, proving that the Red Sea could be conquered by those with enough iron. Yet, Hatshepsut was not a solitary pioneer. A full millennium before the celebrated Age of Discovery, long before Columbus's Nina or Magellan's Victoria, nameless mariners were already challenging the abyss. These ancient sailors lacked the luxury of a compass or a sophisticated map. They sailed blindly into the curve of the world, unaware if the Earth was a sphere or a flat disk ending in a waterfall of stars. Some of these voyages are so startling in their scope that modern scholars still argue over their feasibility. Among these, the voyage to Punt remains a masterpiece of political theatre. Hatshepsut's reign was plagued by the shadows of doubt. The priests and supporters of the young heir, Thutmose III, watched her every move, waiting for a sign of weakness. She needed a grand, undeniable gesture of divine favor. Her gamble was Punt. She ordered the construction of 5 massive seagoing vessels, each 20 meters long and manned by a crew of over 200. These were not mere riverboats, but ocean-bound titans equipped with expansive sails designed to catch setting sail from a Red Sea port. The fleet hugged the African coastline, venturing further south than any Egyptian had gone in generations. To this day, archaeologists debate their exact destination. Was it the sun-drenched plains of modern Somalia, or perhaps the rugged shores of Eritrea and Ethiopia? Regardless of the coordinates, the result was a triumph. The reliefs carved into the walls of Hatshepsut's mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari immortalize the journey in stunning detail. From the felling of trees for the hulls to the meeting with the Queen of Punt herself. The cargo they brought back was a testament to the lushness of the unknown world. Ivory, leopard skins, and rare resins. Most significantly, the successful transplantation of those 31 mirror trees into the gardens of the Temple of Amun at Karnak marked the first time in recorded history that foreign flora was successfully relocated to alien soil. For engineers today, the mystery isn't just where they went, but how they survived. These vessels were held together not by iron nails, but by intricate systems of ropes and wooden pegs, that they weathered the violent storms of the Red Sea. Fast forward 1,000 years to the opposite end of the Mediterranean, where Pharaoh Necho II proposed a task that bordered on lunacy, the circumnavigation of the entire African continent. To achieve this, he didn't turn to his own people, but to the finest mariners of the era, the Phoenicians. These were men whose deep-drafted merchant ships had already woven a web of trade, from the cedar forests of Lebanon to the amber-rich coasts of the Baltic. Necho's plan was a vertical leap in ambition. He commanded them to exit the Red Sea, sail south until the land ended, and return through the Pillars of Hercules into the Mediterranean. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing a century later, recorded that the voyage took 3 grueling years. The Phoenicians were so resourceful that they would beach their ships each autumn, sow grain in the alien soil, wait for the harvest, and only then resume their journey. They literally ate their way around the continent. Herodotus himself was a skeptic. He famously wrote that he did not believe the Phoenicians claimed that, as they rounded the southern tip of Africa heading west, the sun appeared on their right hand, to the north. To a Greek living in the northern hemisphere, this was a physiological impossibility. Yet, it is this very detail that validates the entire story. Once a ship passes below the equator, the midday sun indeed shifts to the northern sky. The Phoenicians couldn't have imagined such a phenomenon. They simply reported what they saw with their own eyes. They had achieved in 600 BC what Vasco da Gama would not replicate until 1497. While the Mediterranean was witnessing the rise of empires, a vastly different saga was unfolding in the heart of the Pacific, a feat of human endurance and intellect that perhaps eclipses all others. Around 3 millennia ago, the ancestors of the modern Polynesians began an exodus across the world's largest ocean. To grasp the scale, one must envision the Pacific as it truly is, a staggering expanse covering a third of the Earth's surface, where tiny specks of land are separated by thousands of miles of trackless blue. The Polynesians did not merely stumble upon these islands, they conquered them. From the northern reaches of Hawaii to the southern tip of New Zealand and the lonely outpost of Easter Island in the east, they settled a triangular empire larger than any continental landmass. They achieved this in double-hulled canoes, without the aid of metal tools, written maps, or navigational instruments. Their science was one of observation and memory. Navigators who held the highest social status interpreted the language of the stars, the subtle shift in wave patterns, the flight paths of migratory birds, and even the varying hues of the water. Their vessels were masterpieces of ancient engineering. 2 massive hulls carved from breadfruit trees, lashed together with coconut fiber and powered by ingenious crab claw sails that allowed them to tack against the wind with revolutionary efficiency. These great canoes carried not just people, but entire ecosystems, livestock, seeds, and fresh water for month-long voyages. By the time Europeans were barely venturing out of sight of their own coastlines, the Polynesians had already mastered the art of deep-sea navigation across the widest reaches of our planet. Centuries later, in 326 BC, another legendary expedition was born at the edge of the known world. Alexander the Great, having reached the banks of the Indus, turned back toward the west, but he did not leave quietly. He commissioned a colossal fleet and placed his trusted friend, Nearchus, at the helm. This armada of 800 ships, carrying nearly 20,000 souls, to find a maritime link between India and Mesopotamia. The journey was a harrowing descent into the unknown. Nearchus led his crews through violent monsoons and hostile encounters with coastal tribes. They were the first Greeks to encounter the titans of the deep, whales, which terrified the sailors so much they beat their oars against the hulls. To drive the monsters away, they discovered reeds that produced honey, sugarcane, a wonder previously unknown to the West. When Nearchus finally reunited with Alexander in modern-day Iran, both men were astonished to find the other alive, as the desert crossing had been as lethal as the sea voyage. Simultaneously, a Greek merchant named Pytheas was pushing the northern boundaries. Sailing out of Marseille, he slipped past the Carthaginian blockade at Gibraltar and ventured into the freezing Atlantic. He circumnavigated Britain with uncanny geographical precision and continued north until he reached Thule, a land of the midnight sun. He described a sea lung, a strange slurry of ice and water that modern science now recognizes as Arctic sludge. The final chapter of ancient maritime grandeur belongs to the treasure fleet of the Ming Dynasty. In 1405, Emperor Yongle appointed Zheng, a brilliant organizer and court eunuch, to command a fleet of unprecedented proportions. Zheng's treasure ships were behemoths, some reaching nearly 100 meters in length, 5 times the size of the ships Columbus would use decades later. For nearly 30 years, Zheng's armada dominated the Indian Ocean, reaching as far as the Swahili coast of Africa, and bringing back such wonders as giraffes to the imperial court. China stood on the precipice of becoming the world's first global maritime superpower. However, following the death of the emperor and Zheng himself, the tides of politics shifted. Confucian officials, wary of the expense and influence of the fleet, ordered the ships to rot and the records to be burned. China withdrew behind its borders, leaving the oceans open for the smaller, hungrier vessels of Europe to eventually claim. In the end, these chronicles of ancient maritime grandeur are more than just stories of trade and timber. They are the echoes of a time when the horizon was not a limit, but an invitation. They prove that the greatest discoveries are made by those who dare to sail blindly into the unknown.